Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is a very accurately titled game. While that number hanging off the end may seem confusing to some, as this is in fact the third entry in the Xenoblade series, this is absolutely a sequel to Xenoblade Chronicles, and not Xenoblade Chronicles X. This works to the game's credit in many areas, and detriment in a few others, but overall it speaks to one very important quality. As in the first entry, Xenoblade Chronicles 2's primary concern is telling an incredibly rich and detailed story in a world that is unlike anything else. There is a sense of familiarity returning to the backs of these giant titans after exploring the gritty world of Mira for so long. Something about the story rings with a magic that X never quite captured. At the same time, the mantra of exploration first that X brandished so proudly has been pulled back in this entry, leading some moments to feel like an odd step sideways. Yet beyond the conflict of story versus exploration that has loomed over the development of the series, battle steps out as a new highlight in Xenoblade's wheelhouse of excellence. All that being said, let us now take a step back and try to get a handle on the many complexities of this huge game. I'm John Raridan, you're watching NWR TV, and this is our review of Xenoblade Chronicles 2 for the Nintendo Switch. For those who couldn't find a copy of the original Xenoblade back on Wii, didn't want to buy a new 3DS XL to play it in 3D, and didn't bother with a Wii U to play X, it may be helpful to start with the basics. Xenoblade as a franchise is a series of open-world, or at least mostly open-world, action JRPGs. The player journeys over vast distances and engages in real-time menu-based combat. It's an oversimplification, but the Xenoblade games could be compared to an MMORPG like World of Warcraft or Guild Wars, minus the other players. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 takes these ingredients and puts a fresher spin on them than one might expect for a numbered sequel. The game takes place on the backs of giant creatures called Titans. These giant life forms roam the Cloud Sea, circling the monolithic World Tree. The explorable areas of these Titans are oftentimes monstrous. One snow-covered titan expanded so far into the distance that I still haven't made it all the way to the other side. Another offered a series of tunnels and cliffs so deep that the average player likely won't be qualified to fully explore their depths until long after completing the primary questline. On top of being expansive horizontally, Monolith Soft has, as usual, developed worlds that are equally interesting vertically. Nearly every titan sports giant foliage, land bridges, or some other structure high above the base plane. This means that even the smaller titans can offer plenty of hidden areas and secrets. The only downside to having multiple titans to explore is that the world never feels quite as unified as previous titles. Each titan exists in a wash of clouds and sky, with only the distant world tree serving as reference for your current position. You'll use fast travel to move from one titan to another, which feels like a bit of a letdown after exploring the entirety of Mira in Xenoblade Chronicles X without a single loading screen. That being said, the loading in Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is incredibly fast. In fact, at times it might be a little too fast. When traveling from a large city on one titan to a city on another, the screen will generally fade up to reveal an untextured, low-poly version of your destination. While I do appreciate being able to zip back and forth between locations, some may find this breaks the immersion somewhat. However, once all the details do pop in, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is an absolutely beautiful game. The world offers up a level of scale that more than holds its own against Nintendo's other giant open-world game from this year, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. The one hitch in exploration comes from the new field skills system. Each party member is accompanied by a blade, which serves as a living, breathing personification of their weapon. Each blade you add to your party comes with an assortment of field skills, which can be leveled up by completing intentionally vague side objectives. These abilities come into play in certain areas of the world where you'll be required to interact with the environment in a way that requires a certain skill. For example, you may have to knock down a massive ice pillar to create a bridge. To do this, you'll need level 3 fire mastery and level 2 strength. Best case scenario, you have a fire-based blade who happens to have met the requirements for leveling up both these skills. More often, you'll find yourself re-equipping every member of your party with 3 level 1 fire users and 2 level 1 strength users. Worst case scenario, you'll find yourself frantically bonding new blades, hoping to get the one with the obscure field skill you need to flip that light switch, or trying to figure out what one of your existing blade's favorite foods is so you can level up their skill. Having to stop all my progress through the story because one of my blades couldn't level up her ancient wisdom skill until she had heard her favorite musical instrument 3 times was not a fun experience. All that being said, for the purpose of this review, I was sticking almost entirely to the primary questline. Someone simply playing this game for fun and taking the time to get caught up in various side activities could very well never encounter this problem. I'll be interested to return to the various side areas I blew past because I didn't want to take the time to level up various field skills once I can wander the game with no time constraints. Combat is perhaps where the greatest changes have taken place as compared to previous entries. You'll engage enemies in real time on the field. You are given direct control of your primary party member and the rest of your party fights autonomously, though you'll have some amount of indirect influence over them now and then during battle. Your character attacks automatically, with each successive auto attack getting stronger in sets of 3 before the attack sequence resets. As you auto attack, your arts will slowly charge up. Different arts grant various buffs and debuffs under certain conditions, the most prevalent of these conditions being your position relative to your target. A certain art may break an enemy, causing them to stop attacking for a short time, but only if you use the art while behind the enemy. However, unlike previous titles, your auto attacks will only persist so long as you are standing still. This means being intentional with your movements is vital to battle. Moving not only means holding off on auto attacks, but also resetting the attack sequence you're currently engaged in. Even more so than in other Xenoblade titles, I found myself fully engaged in every combat encounter. During tougher fights, I'd have to carefully monitor the positions of my allies, ensure that enemy aggro is being drawn by my tank, protect my healer, and ensure that I was setting myself up in the best position for upcoming arts. Combat in Xenoblade Chronicles 2 features a huge range of deep and complex systems that will intimidate at first, but they're an absolute joy to master. Early in the game, most battles can be finished with an understanding of just the most basic concepts. New systems are introduced slowly and explained well, with plenty of room for trial and error. Speaking of things that Xenoblade Chronicles 2 does right, let's talk music. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is a serious contender for my favorite soundtrack of all time. In his review of Xenoblade Chronicles X, our own Donald Terrio stated that outdoing the musical score of the original Xenoblade Chronicles would be like asking for a mountain higher than Everest. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to welcome you to that mountain.
Pride keeps us strong today, glory will be with us. Now the time has come.
Xenoblade Chronicles 2's score outdoes the original in every way. It sports what are, in my opinion, not just better compositions, but a stronger unifying style and higher production values. The music largely combines beautiful orchestral arrangements with traditional Celtic-influenced pieces. At multiple points in my playthrough, I would simply stop moving, go into the options, turn off the sound effects, and just listen to the music. It is absolutely stunning. Other elements of the sound design, unfortunately, don't hold up quite as well. Some of the first Xenoblade's most memorable moments came from its mid-battle dialogue. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 would presumably be the same if you could make out any of that dialogue. Like previous entries, you're limited to 3 active combatants in your party at any given time. However, unlike in the past, each of those party members is accompanied by a blade. This means you will generally have 6 party members running around the battlefield at the same time, and they all have a lot to say. But wait, there's more. You'll also find yourself fighting other human characters on a regular basis who, despite only having 2 recorded lines of dialogue, really want you to hear what they have to say. This far too often results in your party of 6 mouthy characters fighting a party of another 6 mouthy Imperial guards, all of whom are yelling, "Don't forget me," but not quite in sync. Meanwhile, your party is busy making quips and screaming out every move they perform.
You can take me!
All this finally leading to you not being able to hear your own character call out that he is very low on health until suddenly you realize you're dead. The combat dialogue can be turned down in the options menu, but I don't think it should be the player's responsibility to mix the sound for the developers. The story that unfolds as you make your way through the clouds is one of Monolith Soft's finest to date. While I won't go into details, as spoiling any part of Xenoblade Chronicles 2's complex narrative would be a horrible crime against the viewer, rest assured that the twists and turns you've come to expect are all here, twistier and turnier than ever. The world around the characters comes to life with optional side stories highlighting everything from debates around regulation of weapons, global warming, and a mutual respect for both faith and science. The game approaches these issues with a high degree of tact and excellently weaves these real-world issues into its complex lore. The plot itself feels like something that would have been taken from some real-world civilization's ancient creation myths. As I said, there's a certain magic to Xenoblade Chronicles 2's storytelling style that I'd argue elevates it above any currently active JRPG franchise. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is one of the finest JRPGs of the generation, and perhaps of all time. The 2 or 3 complaints I have are ultimately nitpicks, the most significant of which likely won't occur for players taking their time and enjoying the incredible world that Xenoblade Chronicles 2 creates. Washing over any remaining issues is one of the most engaging stories I've ever played, a vastly improved and fun combat system, and an out-of-this-world soundtrack. It sets a precedent for JRPGs on the Switch that I doubt will be topped. Thank you very much for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe to NWR TV. You can also check out NintendoWorldReport.com for a whole lot more, and if you want to support both this channel and the site, you can check out Patreon.com/NWR.